Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Teach, Sleep, Repeat. My name is Dylan.
And my name is Hayden.
How you doing, Hayden?
Oh, that was quick. I'm all right.
Yeah, good.
I'm all right in a bad kind of way. You know when you say I'm all right because that's the reaction you do.
Done
but actually,
thing. Yeah.
But actually, I've got a toothache.
Have you ever asked someone, are they all right? And they've said anything other than, yeah, you? And you thought, why did I ask?
No one's ever done it. That's British culture for you. You're all right. You could be going for the worst thing in the world. Yeah, I'm all right. You?
Yeah, I'm good, you?
Yeah.
All good, yeah.
All good.
Bloody weather. What's
Yeah,
it like,
isn't it? Oh, isn't it?
We do need to open up more, Hayden.
Yeah.
So open up to me. This is what this podcast is for.
Well,
how are you?
my tooth hurts a lot.
Go on, tell me all about this tooth thing.
Right, can I rant?
You can, because these people have come to listen to Kate Languages, but you have to wait, I'm afraid. All this MFL chat about front. Because Hayden's got a little booby in his teeth.
Right, dentists.
Okay.
It's so broken. What is
Your
going
tooth
on?
or the
My tooth and the dentist system. Like everyone, people moan about the NHS, but at least the NHS, at least it exists. And if I do need to go to A&E, I can just go, right?
Yeah, after 8 hours of waiting.
Yeah, but at least it's there. Do you know what I mean? I can go. I haven't had a dentist for years, and I cannot get one. I can't get an NHS dentist, so I have to pay private. And what annoys me is I have to pay private, even though I'm qualifying for the NHS in the same way that everyone else is.
In the same way that you exist as an adult in this country.
Yeah, and I'm like, I exist as an adult in this country. I work and I pay taxes and national insurance.
But even if you don't pay tax for whatever reason, you still can you still should be able to get a dentist. That's the whole point of the system.
It just annoys me so much. I've needed a dentist for ages, right? And I just know that I'm paying like twice the amount than the next person who's getting the exact same procedure as me, but because they're on the NHS. And I don't understand why. Like, I don't get it, and I'm hoping you can help me here because I don't know if I'm just being an idiot.
Do you know what? I'm going to be really honest.
Don't understand it.
It just sounds like you're really angry at the minute, so I don't quite understand the word you're saying.
Right.
So when you say you're getting the same thing as someone else, right? Strip it back for a minute. You don't currently have a dentist. Why not?
I don't know. Oh, okay, I do know because I didn't go to the dentist for a certain amount of time, so they kick you off their books.
Okay.
Apparently.
Right.
Why?
Okay, so devil's advocate here, someone could argue that's your own fault.
Yeah, of course. But no, my point is, what on earth is this system?
Sure, because now you don't have one. You've got a toothache, you need a dentist. Yeah. In the same way that if I wasn't ill for 5 years, I wouldn't go to the doctors. I still then expect to be able to go to the doctors when I am ill.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You have toothache, you need to go and see the dentist. What, you rang them up and they said no, or what?
I've rang loads and I'm like, hello, I want to get this appointment. Can I do it through the NHS?
Right.
They're like, oh no. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't got any NHS spaces. It's like, but I can come in privately. So you've got spaces.
Right.
I just can't pay the NHS price for some reason.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. But same dentist. Yeah. Same dentist.
Right.
Same
okay.
procedure. Same procedure. So is everything the same, right? Including me and the dentist.
But they've decided it's a private one.
But I'm not allowed to pay the NHS price for some reason. Yeah. Okay. No NHS spaces. But I do pay my tax though.
Yeah.
Like I am. There is no reason why I'm not on. Why can't I just pay the NHS prices? Like what? Yeah. What is the reason for that? Oh, because you're not on the books. Can I get on the books then? No. Ring around. Okay. I honest to God rang like 7 different dentists in our area. Every single one of them. Like almost laughed as I said, "You got any NHS spaces?" Like, we get these naive calls every now and then from people that think they can.
Imagine thinking you could get dental
care. Like, no. Well, no, we're totally rams. Like, can I book private? Yeah, come in tomorrow.
Yeah, it's so broken.
So there is space for me. I just can't be on the book where I get it cheaper like everybody else. I have to pay private, and I just.
So who decides that? I wonder. Like, did a dentist just decide we're going to have 30% for private, so we can charge more, and that's okay?
Don't know. I don't know. There's obviously like a dentist might listen to this and be like, oh, they just don't know the system.
I don't think a dentist is listening to this.
Listen, we've got
on their way to new dentistry. I'll listen to you. Couple of primary school teachers talk about teaching. There are no dentists listening. If there is a dentist listening to this, get in touch with us because I don't know what you deserve some kind of award. If a dentist is listening,
I don't know, do I?
Yes, we do know. We've barely got teachers listening.
We got people in Australia listening, but not a dentist. Come on. Oh my God.
That's the funniest thing you've said on this podcast.
Well, it's good because
In a
they
long
wouldn't want to hear
time.
me ranting, would they, about their profession? But either way, I'm sick of it. I'm going to end this by saying I had to go private. I'm paying twice the price now to
my
get some
God.
fill-ins because I'm not an NHS patient despite paying for the NHS. Thank you, dentist. Thank you, government. Thank you, country.
Okay, so added to a list of people who don't listen to the podcast, who we moan about, the government,
The country.
Ofsted, the country, dentists.
Anyway,
that really
that's my
cracked me
rant.
up. Well, I can tell you have two saying because you're not in a very good mood.
I'm not in a good mood. It's bloody annoying. How are you?
That's so funny. I'm even better now. The idea. If there's any dentists out there. Oh my God. Anyway, I'm good. I just wanted to mention something before we go into the chat with Kate. Firstly, we actually recorded this cat with Kate. What is wrong with me? We actually recorded this chat with Kate, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago now. But just the way the schedule's worked out, it's coming out now.
It's so busy.
So busy, guys. We've got so many dentists to go to. And sorry, all the dentists listening, if you were waiting on that MFL chat about modern foreign languages, which I know you are with bated breath. But we got a message on our Instagram from this Instagram page that had been set up. It's not dentist. Don't listen. Called Parents of Hutchinson. Now, Parents of Hutchinson, it seems to me, I get the idea that it's a group of parents who've got together who are fed up with what's happening to their local school.
Right.
It's a nice little village school. And it's been, I wonder what it could be that could rapidly change in a school really quickly, and it's completely obliterated it from the ground up. What could it be, Hayden?
It has their school either there's just some crazy new SLT coming and they're just rocking the boat,
right?
Or it's become an academy.
It's become an academy trust.
Classic.
So, this group of parents have just had enough, basically, and I love this action from the ground up. But this is their words. So again, there's two sides to every story, but this is the words of the parents. And I think, for me personally, the parents are kind of a neutral ground here. Like if their parents are saying something, I think there's something fishy going on. True. Anyway, they're a small village school, and within 6 months, they say it's been completely obliterated, their school, by a new CEO of an academy trust.
CEO.
Still find it mental that schools have CEOs. Yeah. It just doesn't sit right with me. This was the bit that was really the kicker, and it's they have not denied this, the trust. Okay. All teachers are now absent from work, off on sick leave. All teachers. There are 6 teachers who are all off on sick leave. So immediately I was like, cool, well, that's an immediate red flag. What's your first opinion there where you hear 6 teachers are on sick leave 6 months after a CEO came in and it was taken over?
Well, there's 2 options, isn't there?
Right.
Either
there's a bug going round.
Yeah, it's just a crazy coincidence.
The Hutchinson virus. They're all off for 6 months.
They're all off, and which is a possibility, extremely low.
Yeah, but when they're all off because it's work-related stress.
Yeah. Okay, if it's specifically work-related stress, then obviously there's a problem with the school. How can anyone be thinking, it could be something else though? Maybe they weren't strong. They weren't a strong team, and they just didn't like the leadership. It's like, no, the leadership are terrible. Clearly.
So this to me seems like the culmination of everything we've ever spoken about in this podcast of what could go wrong in a school. So they were next in line for an Ofsted inspection, previously outstanding school, and the only one on the trust which was outstanding. Right. But the CEOs come in and heaped huge pressure on the school, tried to make many changes in a really short space of time. Teachers are curriculum leads for up to 4 subjects, which we know can really affect small schools like this. God. You've got to have a lead for music and ICT and all that kind of stuff. As well as safeguarding SEN and stuff, just the pressures through the roof of such a small team to deliver that. And these parents have complained to the trustees, been completely ignored, complained to the DfE, awaiting a response at the time of this message being sent, and they've actually now had a few articles published in some local newspapers. Oh, right. And as of yesterday, which is what jogged my memory of this, there's a BBC article now.
About them?
About the parents complaining. Basically saying their children, I think one staff, I'll have to find it on the BBC website quickly, but it was something like they've had 6 different teachers in the last few weeks, just where basically this trust have got in staff from the wider trust to come in and cover this absentees, to go try and cover up the fact that they've completely rinsed the school. So what would you say to these parents who are worried about this?
What, as in advice on what to do?
Well, no, I would say they're clearly doing the right thing, but and people listening who are thinking, are they overreacting, these parents? No. I want you to put into words, how we see this happen. It's not made up. Well,
firstly, good for you, parents, stick up for the teachers. That sounds like what you're doing there, is you're sticking up for the teachers. You're not just jumping on the bandwagon and being like, the teachers must be terrible. God, how dare they leave my child going off for work-related stress? So the bigger issue there is, the teachers, if they're off on work-related stress, there's a problem in the school. But we do see this all the time. I mean, I don't see this all the time. This is next level, in my opinion.
But it's what could happen to a lot of schools, and could be happening without parents knowing about it. You know, the amount of times we've seen people go off on work-related stress, in previous times, where we know it's happened, we know why it's happened, and then I'm not being funny, someone unqualified has just been ushered in to kind of cover that class for a while.
Yeah.
And it kind of just goes under the radar, and parents don't seem to know what's going on sometimes. It's because we're completely broken. And what winds me up is we talk about all the time the pressures we face as schools and the funding cuts that we've had. We're already in a dire situation as schools, and what we don't need are these unbelievable people in suits just walking in and being like, I'm going to change 47 things in a row because Ofsted said once that they like the books to be the right way up in the book corner.
Yeah, that was mad.
Chill out. You are the direct reason, and you are contributing to this work-related stress. Yes, we've got enough of it already with Ofsted and just the fact we've got no money, but these SLT are not helping. And I want just maybe say a word, Hayden, on the safety of the children in this. This is what the parents are worried about as well. Yeah, they're sticking up for the teachers, but they feel like they're putting their children into vulnerable situations, sending them in.
Well, they are. Your children are now not getting a decent, potentially not getting a decent education.
And how on earth can they know them well? If they've got educational needs, how on earth can the fourth different person in 2 weeks know the needs of that child?
Well, they won't. There might be some files in place, but realistically, we're relying on a lot of cogs in the machine there. But I think it's terrible. I think it's absolutely dreadful, and I think they should keep fighting against that. And I think the SLT and management and trust should be held extremely accountable.
So I'm going to read to you what the spokesperson of the trust has said in response to this, because I kind of saw this and I thought, well, I wonder what the trust have to say, just to see, could they basically say, actually, no, it's because of this, and this.
Yeah.
Okay, a reasonable explanation. Maybe we don't have to agree with everything you're doing, but okay, that makes sense. Yep. Here's exactly what they said. I want to see what your opinion is of this. So spokesperson of the trust said, unfortunately, we have had a number of staff from Hutchinson Memorial CE First School off sick and have been taking steps to support these staff as well as ensure the education of our children is not affected. We understand parents' concerns, and as well as sending regular newsletters and responding to their queries about the issue, we have already met with a number of them to ensure that they are truly fully informed and to reassure them that we are doing our very best to mitigate any impact. The trust is investing in educational and financial support for the school, a spokesperson added. Ofsted said it didn't want to comment on individual inspectors and schools.
That was just a lot of nothing. There was nothing there. There was nothing was said. It was like any politician on TV ever.
Are you denying what's been said?
Yeah.
No.
That was very political, wasn't it? Like, when the politicians go on and they get questioned about something where their answer might look bad to the followers, so they don't answer it. They do anything to avoid it, and they just say waffle.
It's like the amount of parents who are saying they've not had answers for months.
Yeah.
And the spokesperson has just come out and said, we've spoken to them.
Yeah. You
haven't though properly, have you? Like, I'm sorry, you haven't.
No.
Because parents are a neutral force in a school, pretty much. So, if they've got a question and they're saying it's not been answered, it's probably not been answered.
Yeah.
It's pathetic.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk to someone from that. I don't know why they talk to me.
Take your kids out, genuinely, if you can.
Well,
get your kids out.
This is the point. They're saying they don't want to. It's a small village school. It's their only option. And also the fact that they were doing really well in that school before this happened. They love the school.
Yeah.
They've got the parent of a child here with additional needs who said that the teachers will find we're getting so much out of them. We know we've built relationships with kids. We get the most out of them.
Yeah, of course.
And then it's come to the point where the teacher's about to go, I can't do it, bye. And that kid's left in limbo. And that parent doesn't want to take that kid out because where else would they go? But at the same point knows they're getting a bad education.
Yeah. I don't know what the answer is to that. It's a horrible situation other than to keep pushing for change quicker, because clearly the change is needed for these teachers to come back.
I'll stay in touch with the person who sent me that. Anyone who wants to know the articles, I'll link them below if you want them.
What do you think was what's your gut feeling as to the main reason that all the staff went off? Because I know and the reason I say this is because you mentioned that they're making loads of changes at once. Do you think that's why? All of the change at once?
Yeah, my personal opinion on this is that when 6 or 7 teachers all go off on work-related stress at the same time, that has to be extremely terrible, the situation.
Yeah.
Because teachers are the reason the fact we're still in this job anyway shows that we're quite resilient as a whole. We're quite resilient people in terms of we know that there's no support for us. We know that it's a job where we have to work ridiculously hard. The amount of hours we put into the output of what is at the end of their job in terms of the money we get is terrible. So we're already battling against that, and we already know that it's awful. For that many people, as a proportion of a small school, to have to go off to work-related stress, to me there is only one reason why that's happening, and that is the direct impact of 6 months before being taken over by a trust, and academy CEOs come in and said, we need to change absolutely everything right now. We know what that feels like, being told from the top down that we're changing 17 things at once, and we know the effect it can have on a staff team. And I think a lot of staff, 90% of the time, will take that burden on their back and burn themselves out. And it sounds like these guys have said, no, I'm either already burnt out, so I'm left because I'm stressed, or I'm not having it, I'm not taking it. And this, guys, this is what happens when teachers stand up and say, this is unacceptable. We're working in unacceptable conditions, and you're expecting too much from me. This is what happens, and the kids lose out. And again, there'll be a bunch of people who listen to that and say, those bloody teachers, how could they let those kids down? And I want to tell you now, the answer is not that the teachers have let the kids down. The system has let the kids down. The lack of funding has let the kids down. And in this situation, we can point directly to that trust and say, you have let the children down.
Yeah,
because your actions,
is your fault.
Your actions have led to these teachers leaving.
Like, what is your job as a manager of a trust, as a head teacher, as a CEO? Your job is no longer actually anything to do with the day-to-day running of the kids. Your job is to manage the staff so that they do that job properly. That's just simple business, really, isn't it?
And it trickles down. So, but de facto, it is the kids. But you do that by fostering an amazing situation where the kids who are 95% in front of the children are the ones delivering an amazing education. Guess what? Your inputs caused them to leave.
Yeah. If all the kids in my class didn't want to come to school anymore because of the pressures I put on in the classroom, I made it so horrible to be in my classroom that all of the kids didn't want to come in anymore, and they're just going off left, right, and centre. It's my fault. If all of the teachers go off, it's the person above them's fault. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. It's simple, isn't it? But whether there's a simple solution, I don't know, because it sounds like they're very highly politically trained to just ignore it all and bat it all off.
Yeah.
I don't know. My prediction is Ofsted will come in eventually because there'll be enough backlash, and they'll come in and just gut the whole lot and just get rid of them all.
The issue is Ofsted are part of the problem. Ofsted are part of the issue why they're at SLT who think they can behave that way.
Yeah, there's only so much bad media, isn't there? They can take. You think about during the pandemic when everyone was like, "Oh, can we feed our kids though?" And they were like, "Nah." And then when there was enough bad press, they were like, "Oh yeah, we'll feed the kids. We love it." Sometimes they're forced into making decisions that are actually good.
It's so true. It's so true.
Well, that's pretty depressing.
Sorry.
I'm sorry I don't like that because I don't know what to say. Like, there's nothing. I can't even be like, "Oh, I've heard of this situation before. You need to do this, this, and this, and things will improve quickly."
Sounds like they're on it.
Yeah.
Sounds like they're on it. And again, from a professional point of view as a teacher, I'm grateful to them for the line they're taking, which is, wait a minute, let's just look at the macro here. Why are you treating the teachers
what do the
this way?
trust want? The trust obviously want the parents to turn on the teachers, right?
Yeah, of course, and they want them to not think it's their fault and then just be like, oh, no, the trust are looking after the school because they're filling the gaps left by their lazy teachers.
Daily Mail told me, actually, there's the lazy teachers. We must have just got 6 of them. They're always so... Why did we get the 6?
It's so weird because for years before they were outstanding and really good, and it just so happens that when we changed management, they became really lazy and terrible.
Lazy.
So weird.
God, I hate teachers.
It's like all them striking teachers. They must be all lazy. They must be all terrible. I mean, it's the only way we can explain it, right?
So lazy.
Thank you.
Anyway, moving on from lazy teachers not doing their job properly. Okay.
Should we talk about a teacher who left their job and set up an amazing business?
Let's talk to Kate.
Because me and Hayden set up a business and have gone part-time, and Kate left teaching. Well, not part-time, it's full-time doing her job. So that's a nice segue, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Okay,
we've got the brilliant Kate Languages. We're going to talk about all things modern foreign languages and running a successful business, which she does. I think it was a really nice chat. I'm looking forward to it. Should we jump in?
Let's do it.
Hello, Kate Languages. Is that your real second name, Languages? Is that...
Do you know what? That is so funny. It's one of my hilarious jokes. I always do my name's Kate Clifton, but haha, most people think my name's Kate Languages. Oh, you got in there with my joke before
I'm sorry.
could.
I just think everyone, that's how they used to do second names, wasn't it? That's where you get like Smith from. They were a blacksmith. It's like, you're a language teacher.
That's so true. Although I do remember when I was a teacher, I did used to tell kids that my first name was Miss, because they always want to know your first name. I was like, oh, it's Miss, because my parents were teachers and they wanted me to be a teacher, so they just call me Miss. So yeah.
It always reminds you of the episode of The Simpsons. If anyone watches The Simpsons, where Homer, his whole life, he's been called Homer J. Simpson. It's like, he's never known what the J stood for, and he's like, I just need to know. And he finally gets to this thing where it's like revealed it's behind a bush, and he moves this tree, and the J stands for J-A-Y.
Classic. When I was at school, and it depends how young the kids are, right? How much they believe this sort of stuff. When I was at school in year 2, I'll never forget this. My teacher told me that she lived in the attic of the school. She was like, you see those bits there? And the bit like the roofs where you can kind of poke them up.
Yeah.
She was like, yeah, I just go up there because it's easy for me to do my job. And I fully believed it. And I was gutted when I found out it wasn't true. So.
It's like when they see you out of school and they're just like, I saw you at McDonald's at the weekend, miss. And you're like, oh, why didn't you come and say hi? That's just a bit creepy that you just like watched me ordering my burgers in McDonald's. And like,
lettuce falling out your mouth. She's like, oh, look, it's Kate Languages. So sorry, Kate, we have like
it's Miss Languages.
Miss Languages, yeah.
That's her full name.
That would be such a good name, wouldn't it, for an MFL teacher?
I think you should change it. Deed poll or something.
Yeah, you could do that.
Oh no, I did that a couple of years ago when I got married. I'm not doing it again. I'm not changing my name again.
Just don't tell him.
It's just really annoying.
I've married Mr. Languages. Anyway, I'm sorry. We went on a real sidetrack there. Kate, welcome to the podcast. We've been having this back and forth for ages now, and MFL, modern foreign languages, this huge thing we want to talk about. We're going to talk about the fact you've left teaching now and you've got your own business, and that'd be really interesting to dive into. But before we go into all of that, just for our listeners at home, who are you, Kate Languages? What do you do? What's your story?
Okay, well, my real name is Kate Clifton, Mrs. Kate Clifton. And yes, I used to be a languages teacher. I left 7 years ago now, which has gone really, really quickly, actually. So it's my 7th anniversary of setting up Kate Languages, which is what people probably know me better as, in May. So yeah, I don't know how that's gone so fast. How far back do you want me to go? I studied French and German and taught English as a foreign language for a little while, went and travelled around, lived in Indonesia for a year, which was really, really fun. And then came back to the UK thinking, I'll do a PGCE and then I'll just like go and teach in an international school, go back to Indonesia or Singapore or somewhere. Never did that. Stayed in London for a few years. And then did a master's in applied linguistics and then went back into teaching for another few years. So I kind of left twice, once. And when I was doing my master's, part of me was like, oh, maybe I'll do a PhD and I'll just like teach in a university. But I don't know, I just got back into secondary teach. So yeah, I trained to teach secondary French and German. And then I've always kind of had a bit of Spanish as well, been to Spain loads, and along the way I've picked up an A-level in Spanish as well, just randomly.
As you do. Just the odd A-level.
As you do. So yeah. But I think that's really helped that I can offer French, German and Spanish. Yeah. Which a lot of people can't do, which is totally normal. Like, I wouldn't expect people to be able to do the 3 languages. So that's me in a nutshell. And then, like I say, about 7 years ago, I left teaching and I started off doing tuition with, this is one of the things about languages actually, is that I was teaching kids from the age of about 5 right through to adults. I had like a little group of retired adults and we'd all meet in this woman's kitchen and sit around and teach them a bit of holiday Spanish and all that kind of thing. So I did that. And then I started working with teachers more and more. And now I just work with teachers. And people always find this really funny as well. I teach languages to languages teachers because we could talk about, what's going on in primary schools and languages. But what's really interesting in secondary schools as well is you do get a lot of people who like me, have a degree in French and German. And then the school wants to introduce Spanish. Quite a lot of schools are phasing out German in particular. And they want to introduce Spanish, but the teachers don't speak Spanish. So they're like, you'll be fine, don't worry. So these teachers are just like, I don't speak Spanish, and I'm being expected to suddenly teach Spanish. So that's where I come in. And I noticed that a lot of people are talking about this on social media and sort of saying, I need to do a SKE, subject knowledge course or something to learn a bit of Spanish. And I was thinking, this could be quite good. So
language is a much harder one to kind of wing, isn't it? I have secondary school teacher friends and they always say that they're constantly being like pushed around from pillar to post in which subject they're teaching. They'd be like, I came here to teach drama and suddenly I'm doing the maths curriculum for the year 7s this year, But language, I've never really thought about that. You can't just kind of go in, like in primary school, we can just keep a lesson ahead. When it comes to topics we've never taught before, it's really not that hard to just be a step ahead of the kids. But that doesn't really work, I suppose, at all. It's harder, isn't it? With languages.
It's much harder with languages. And I think even if you speak French, Spanish is kind of similar. Although I do find with the teachers who I teach, the ones who are French speakers learning Spanish, do get their heads really, really muddled up, and then they'll mispronounce words because they look the same in French and Spanish and things like that. So it's not that easy. And I think, there is a bit of a thing like try and keep one step ahead of the kids, try and keep one page ahead in the textbook. But you don't, a lot of it's about your confidence as well, and like being able to pronounce the language. And then always knowing a little bit more than the kids. So quite often what I'll do is we'll teach, I'll be doing verbs or something, and I'll just be like, right, I'm going to teach you the whole verb, but you're probably not going to have to teach this, but there's always going to be one kid who's like, but I want to say we play. And you're going, I only know how to say I play. And I'm like, so that's kind of, what I do when I'm working with teachers. So it's really interesting.
Fluent do you reckon, on the scale of nothing to fluent speaker of a language, where do you think you need to be on that scale to like get away with the job? To be able to do it at least semi-effectively.
And we're not asking this as people who are not fluent at all.
We know all of the languages.
All of the languages.
I can do languaging really well.
Yeah. I think it really, really depends on the level. Obviously, if you're teaching A level, then you need to be pretty fluent.
Yeah.
I don't think you can blag it. I mean, like I say, I've got an A level in Spanish, but I wouldn't teach Spanish A level. I can teach Spanish GCSE. So it's almost like you need to just be like the level ahead. So if you've got an A level, you can probably teach GCSE fairly confidently. If you've got a GCSE, you can probably teach Key Stage 3. I think for primary school, ideally, if you've got a GCSE in the language. But then saying that, I mean, I just keep throwing in all these random languages. I actually randomly did Italian GCSE about 20 years ago, and I'm not going to go around teaching Italian. Spanish, I know, it's mad. Learned a bit of Indonesian when I lived in Indonesia. I wouldn't be teaching any Indonesian either. But no, I mean, my point here is I did it 20 years ago, and I would not teach Italian. I literally can't remember any, and I would probably just speak Spanish if I tried to teach Italian. So yeah, but I would say you don't need to be fluent. Absolutely not. No.
Well, I guess at the point I'm going to come in, because what Hayden's saying is a good point about, I think with languages, you think it's so unique almost. That's what I think anyway. Because if I think about history, very much so, I can learn about Tutankhamun 10 minutes myself, because I'm going to deliver a lesson on Tutankhamun. With, I feel like maths is probably closer to MFL. And what I mean by this is with maths, you're teaching something, a strand, and as a teacher, you need to be confident enough to kind of make those links. It's a very like link-based curriculum of maths. You're like, oh, this strand definitely links with like what we're going to be doing in the future, or what we've done in the past, very much so. It's harder to teach maths unless you can make those links or teach it well. And I feel like with MFL, making those links would be super, super important. Like you said about those verbs, there's always one kid who wants to do the
wants to know something else.
It'd be hard to kind of keep kids in a box in a modern foreign language lesson, because like you said, there'll be some kids who can already count to 10. So if you're counting to 10 and you've just taught yourself how to count to 10 and kids can already do it, it's quite tricky then, I suppose, to be like, oh, well, count to 20, but I don't actually know that. So
yes, so let's find a YouTube video and try and sing along.
Exactly. So what, in that situation, what do you do when I guess my point is, you've got a class of kids, and this happens in primary school, and I think it happens a lot more in secondary school, because I think about my experience when I went to secondary school. My school taught French. Another school that like kind of joined together in that local area hadn't taught French.
Your primary school?
Yeah, my primary school taught French, and another primary school hadn't. We both went to secondary school, and half the class just couldn't do anything, and half the class could. Like, how do you manage to manage that as like a modern foreign language teacher?
That is such an interesting question, and it's something that as secondary school teachers, I've got to say, in my experience teaching MFL, we kind of just start from the beginning again in year 7, because you can't guarantee, and you're talking about 2 primary schools. I mean, I've worked in plenty of secondary schools where you've got like 10 feeder primary schools, and some of them might have done a bit of Spanish, and some of them have done a bit of French. Some of them think they've done quite a lot of French, and they're like, yeah, I know bonjour and all that in it. And you're like, okay, anything else? They're like, un, deux, trois. And you're like, right, okay, great. So yeah, and the thing is, you can't immediately set them according to how much they've done at primary school. And actually, we would find that probably by October half term, if not Christmas in year 7, you've probably all caught up. And there are some primary schools where the provision is absolutely incredible. And I know it sounds weird, I almost feel a bit sorry for the kids from those schools, because they do actually have really, really good language skills. And then they're just like, just sitting there learning how to introduce themselves again and whatever. So, I mean, that is one of the biggest challenges though with secondary teaching, definitely. But it just, adaptive teaching, that's
exactly
one of these buzzwords, isn't it? But it is so important. And I think you just have to be aware of that. One of the other massive things that you have with languages that you don't get with any other subject is native speakers.
Sure.
So you might get a native speaker coming in year 7 and you're like, well, I'm teaching everybody else how to count to 20 and you're completely fluent.
What do you do?
Yeah, what do you do?
I mean, ideally you put them in another language, but sometimes you can't, and it's hard. But again, you just have to adapt your teaching, and they sometimes they quite like being a little assistant, and they can help you, and you can model pronunciation and stuff with them. So there are a lot, there are so many different things that you can do with them. Usually, again, and this is just in my experience, but I know from a lot of other people, they find this as well. Quite often their writing skills aren't great if they've grown up in the UK, or if they left, they were born, say, in Spain and then left when they were quite young. Their speaking and listening will be great, but their reading and writing won't be great. So you can kind of focus on that as well. So there's ways of getting around everything, I guess. But I think for me, as a secondary teacher, I actually think the language that you teach in your primary school isn't the most important thing. So worrying about your curriculum and, we've got to cover this and we've got to do this, and they need to know how to use different tenses and they need to know how to give an opinion and stuff like that. It's great. It's all well and good, but they will be taught that straight away in year 7.
Yeah, sure. What would you like from us then? Like as primary school teachers, as a secondary school teacher, what would you like from primary schools?
I was going to go one step further even and just say, okay, based on what you've just said, like, is there any point in us doing it? Like, even honestly, like, I'd have that point, but I'm sure there is a point, but I want to hear it from you. Like, if they are just going to be taught it again, and like those kids who hadn't been taught anything kind of just catch up by, October half term anyway, what's stopping a primary school just saying, oh, well, they'll just learn it anyway? Like, what are the benefits, do you think, of starting early and doing something? If it doesn't matter what language, then what are the kids getting out of it, in your opinion?
Do you know what? My answer is actually the same to both of your questions, even though they're quite different questions, which is really interesting, because for me, it's about motivation and for the kids to just have an idea that people speak other languages.
Sure.
And that you can communicate in other languages, and to come up to secondary school with enthusiasm for the idea of learning foreign languages. And like I said, I don't think it hugely matters which one they've been doing. I think the most important thing is that they haven't got the impression, and I'm not saying that you guys do this at all, but throughout primary school, that like, oh God, this is this thing that we've got to like shove in our already very packed timetable, and just like,
that's the problem.
I've got to do French.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's funny hearing you say that, because I was just imagining, okay, what would a history teacher, a secondary school teacher, say in this same scenario? And you know what? I think it would be the same. I think if we asked a history teacher, do you care if they learned about Tutankhamun in primary school? They'd probably be like, not really.
They'd care more about skills, wouldn't they?
They'd care more about, well, have you exposed your kids to the subject of history, and have you made the most effort to get them to enjoy learning about history? I feel like that would be quite a similar answer to what you're saying in terms of what a primary school should do.
What is the MFL provision in your school then? I've listened to your podcast loads, and I'm like, I've never, I don't know, maybe you have talked about it, but I've not heard you.
No. This is why we're really keen to have a chat as well, because I think it's something we've not talked about much. And I think that one of the biggest reasons is because, well, there's two reasons. One, because we don't teach it in our school. But like, as in me personally, the kids get modern foreign languages, but me personally as a teacher, we don't teach modern foreign languages.
Whereas we used to in our old school. We should reflect on that.
So
maybe we'll go through.
Interesting.
It is interesting, because you're right. When we were in our old school, it was very much, we taught it, but it was like, and this is going to sound awful, it was like the bottom of the rung. It was the bottom of the rung in terms of, we are given so much support and so much help and so much guidance and so much, we need to see this for every other subject. And for modern foreign languages, it was, we've got an online subscription to this thing, just click through one a week, do one lesson a week. And what we do now is, we don't teach it at all, and we have a teacher come in who literally just teaches Spanish in the afternoon, and they teach Spanish to the whole school. So on Monday they'll do year 4, Tuesday they'll do year 3, whatever it is, because that's part of our PPA cover. So we don't even think about it as teachers now, and I think that's a big point, I suppose, with the children. They don't get a lot of cross-curricular stuff because it's not on my radar, and I don't think about it. I don't think, oh well, actually I've just taught Spanish numbers, so I could put it as the date. I'm like, there's none of that really. So I mean, I don't know
what's your opinion on those two scenarios, because they're very different. One where you have a specialist teacher doing it, but the classroom teacher doesn't do it ever, and one where the classroom teacher is doing it, but it's very scaffolded with just a piece of software basically, where you just click through it, it says the word out loud, shows them how to spell it. It was very prescriptive.
Anyone could have taught it.
I'm not necessarily even saying that's a bad thing, but I am interested in what you think about that.
So I think that kind of software is absolutely essential in that kind of situation. And I know some really, really good companies that are creating stuff for primary school teachers to teach languages. And I just, and I think not every school can or wants to get a specialist in. So in that kind of situation, I think that's absolutely amazing. So I'm not going to, definitely wouldn't knock them in any way. But what's really interesting is, until you were just describing that, I would have always just said, no, you need to get a specialist in. There are so many advantages. I can't see any disadvantages. But then you're saying you then don't embed it across anything else at all. So then the kids only have like that half an hour or an hour a week, which, I mentioned I did a master's, and some part of that I was doing was about like ages of language acquisition. And I think people have this idea of just like, oh, kids just learn languages really, really quickly. But actually it's, if they're immersed in a language, if you move to a foreign country with a child, the child will pick up the language really, really, really quickly. And the adults don't pick it up as quickly. But if you're only teaching, if you've got like structured teaching, half an hour a week or an hour a week, kids don't actually retain it that much from week to week. So it is really, really helpful. And I've actually done some training on this as well with primary schools on how to embed it in your everyday teaching. So just things like doing the date, when you're doing the register. So find out from the Spanish teacher what they've covered. So have they done colours, for example? And as you're doing the register, you can just say to them, right, tell me your favourite colour in Spanish. And they can literally just say one word in Spanish, and they're just, and they might all end up saying the same one because they can't remember. They just copy what the first person
But at
said.
least they're thinking about it, right?
But at least there's it's one word that they're saying, or what's your favourite animal, or there's little things like that you can be doing. But I think the best thing that you could have would be a bit of language training from the person who comes in. Sure. And again, it's time, isn't it? And you'd probably have to pay them extra to do that. And, there are all sorts of barriers and obstacles. And I do understand that. But I think if you can try to remember it, and, even just once a week, right, Monday is Spanish register day, and you get them to tell you their favorite color or their favorite animal, or just something like that while you're doing the register. It's easy. It's easy when that's your specialism and that's what you're thinking about. But when you've got a million other things and you need to ask them about, I don't know, whether they're having school dinners or not, or whatever the other random things that you have to ask during the register.
I don't know how to say that in Spanish.
Yeah, so I've already got a list of other things I'm forgetting to do.
Right, okay. Before I'm really eager to talk about you leaving teaching and what you did, but I've got one question I just want to finish off with, because it's something that's cropped up during this chat. It's not something I thought about before. I'm really interested in, you mentioned how you don't think it's necessarily very important exactly what language they're doing when they're younger. When it's just the idea of having this passion and this idea. So this is a two-pronged question, I guess. Is there a point where you think it becomes important what they're learning, like in their journey through secondary school, for example? Is there a point where you should go, oh, actually, now it does matter. They should be learning this language because of X, Y, Z, or they should avoid this one. Like you said, German's being phased out for whatever reason. And do you think that there's enough room in our curriculum and our specialisms and our trainings to broaden what children learn? Like, for example, I think about our current culture, and I think about Polish, and I think about Arabic, and those really, really in particular parts of the country would be incredibly useful probably for that community to learn. Is it still useful for them just to be doing French because we've always done French and you might go on holiday at some point? So I guess to summarize, when does it become important what they learn, and what is important to learn at that point?
So they're such good questions. And actually, my gut reaction is no, it doesn't matter which language you learn. I really think the most important thing, it's because we speak English. Like, obviously, if you live in another country, everybody learns English. And it's almost a given. And I actually kind of hate it when people compare English people learning foreign languages to like, oh, well, everyone in Holland speaks English. Well, yes, of course they do, because they've been like, they're surrounded by it all the time. And you can't count that. It's like, how many people in Holland also speak German or also speak Spanish? So you kind of have to compare it to that. So that's me on my little soapbox about that.
That's good though. I've always thought that, because Hollywood, right, and songs and these huge media things that get put out there. Of course, the Dutch people will be exposed to that. The most famous people in the world speak English. Like, it's different. I completely agree.
It's a completely different thing. And they know that they absolutely essentially have to have it for any job that they're going to do in the future. I mean, it's an absolute given. So it is a completely different situation. I think in some ways, it's kind of good in Britain, because there isn't one language that you're like, well, you really need to learn this to get by in life. So it is more of a like, it's a nice, it's a kind of nice thing to do. And yes, there are all sorts of statistics and research about actually it would be really useful if British people could speak more languages, and it'd be really good for the economy and really good for trade and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think there is one particular language that we should be focusing on more. I think the reason why we all teach French is because we all learn French, and it's almost this like circle of like, we learn French at school. Right, so I speak French because I learnt French at school, and my teachers taught me French because they learnt French at school. And then, and you just kind of, it is completely circular. Yeah, it really, really is. So, and to broaden it out, I think you're right. I think if you've got communities where there are a high percentage of Polish people, for example, then why are we not teaching children some Polish in schools? But again, it goes back to who can teach Polish, because I learnt French at school. I didn't learn.
And where are the resources? There's a billion resources for French, but are there as many for Polish? I don't even know.
We're going to talk about resource in a second. If we move on, a nice little segue there, I suppose, isn't it, to talking about you leaving teaching, Kate. So Hayden, I know Hayden's really passionate about this, and he talked to a lot of people, and I know, Kate, you're really passionate about helping people with this idea of leaving teaching. So I'm going to throw it over to Hayden.
I'm very passionate about Kate leaving teaching.
All that amazing stuff you just talked about, and you left teaching. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, we talk about it a lot in this podcast. We try to do the ups and downs of teaching, as you know from listening. But you mentioned that you left in, was it 2017? So
2017, yeah.
I guess just, for any listeners that don't know you, why did you leave teaching? What made you do it?
Okay, so that is a really good question, because in some ways it almost wasn't it wasn't a conscious decision that I made, if that makes sense. So 6 months before I set up Kate Languages, I was signed off sick. So I was actually signed off with stress for 6 months. At some point in those 6 months, I just made the decision. I was like, I'm not going back. I literally
can't go back.
So I mean, I wouldn't recommend this to anybody, to get to the point where people might not want to hear about it in too much detail. But I was having panic attacks. I was suffering from anxiety. I literally could not get in my car to drive to work. So the doctor signed me off sick with stress, and I just kept getting signed off. And every time I kept thinking about it, and I remember talking to my husband, and we were like, oh, maybe I could do a phased return. And I remember quite clearly, we were walking somewhere, and I just stopped, and I just couldn't breathe. And I was like, nah, I don't think that's going to work, is it? Because I just had a bit of a panic attack again. So and I think one of the reasons I am so passionate about working with teachers, and I just feel like I've dedicated everything I do now to sort of trying to make teachers' lives a bit easier, is because I just don't want people to get to that stage that I got to recognise it before it gets to that point. And I always say, and I want to say this again, it was nothing to do with the kids. It really wasn't. Yeah. And I felt so good.
Yes,
I had a year 11 tutor group. I felt so awful leaving them. And but like I say, I physically couldn't go into school. So, but it's kind of annoying because I left stuff at school, and I've got these books that I'd taken in that I still think about now and then. And I'm like,
yeah.
And it also, so my mum was a languages teacher as well. I mean, I just literally just copied my mother. And actually the one I think about is this really old, like, German book. It's really good. And it was hers. And I'm just like, I feel a bit bad that I've left it at that school. But anyway, but I've never been back. I literally never, ever went back to that school ever again.
I think it's good for people to hear this. I know you said, I'm not sure how much I'll talk about this. I think it's good that you've done this. And I thank you for sharing your personal life, because I know it might be quite hard to talk about because it was a tough time. But a lot of our listeners are going through that right now, or people working their way up to that because they're getting stressed and stressed and stressed. And teaching is just one of the biggest traps, I think, in terms of careers. You really do, whether it's, I don't know if on purpose or not, but you are so made to feel bad about feeling that way in teaching. It's like, no, it's okay. You didn't come into this for anything other than selfless reasons, did you? You must get over that. The kids need you. You've got to do this.
Children.
And people get themselves in such a rut. And so it's nice speaking to you 7 years on, seeing living your best life. You're doing the thing you're passionate about, and actually you did get over that hurdle. I think people just need to see that sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I always say my biggest piece of advice to people is always, everything takes longer than you think it will. And if I could go back and tell myself that when I was younger and just like super impatient, but like you say, I think, people see me 7 years on and think, oh yeah, she's got this business and she's doing really well, she's doing this, that and the other. But it was a lot of hard work, for like, so the work that I did, obviously, building up the business, but also the work I've done on myself, and I've had counselling and all sorts, like and other stuff that it takes a long time, and I think it does take it takes time and patience, and just quickly, being gentle with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. How quickly after that sort of moment happened where you were like, I just can't go back, how long did it take to go from that place to back to a steady place, I guess, where you were happy? Maybe even, I guess the question could be, how long did it take you to go from there to being Kate Languages and setting up your business? Was that quite a long journey, or was it very much, nope, I'm out of this now, I'm cracking on with something else, or did you just need time?
So I'm trying to remember now. So like I say, I kind of had like a rolling sick note for a while. It was November, so I think that kind of took me up to Christmas, and then I think it was after Christmas. I was like, I'm not coming back in the, the what's it called, the winter term? No, what's it called, spring term.
We don't have winter term, do we? It's very odd.
Somebody's schools for 7 years.
Autumn and then spring, isn't it? What happens to the winter? Anyway, sorry. Right. So I can't remember if I made the decision before Christmas to say I'm done. Like, I'm not, and I knew that I wasn't going to come back in the spring term. Why do I keep forgetting what it's called? In January. And I can't remember. All I remember is I think I had made that decision quite quickly.
Yeah.
And then it felt like it took quite a long time before I was actually sort of allowed to completely stop. And I wasn't allowed to set up my business. So actually, what then happened over those few months was that I was kind of behind the scenes, kind of secretly. Probably shouldn't even talk about it now. No, it's fine. I mean,
they're listening. They're on they're all listening. They've got your German book and they're watching. So right away.
I'm gonna burn it. So I was thinking about what I wanted to do. Like I said, I was having counselling. I remember like yapping at my poor counsellor. He was like, I've got no idea what you're on about, mate.
That's what they're good at.
But and just deciding like I wanted to do some tuition, and I set up my Instagram and my Facebook page. I'm really lucky as well. My stepmom kind of does web sites for small businesses and things like that. So she helped me with my website, and that's how we came up with Kate Languages. We were literally just like putting in various different names, and Kate Languages came up, and I was like, oh, that could work out quite well.
Yeah, so you didn't marry Mr. Languages? Is that what
No, I didn't. I didn't become Mrs. Languages. No.
Who's going to be our next guest? That's a shame.
Yeah, no. Although my husband did study languages, which is a bit weird, but yeah.
You married the OG Mr. Language. Just
OG Mr. Languages. So yeah, but anyway, I think I kind of knew that's what I wanted to do, and I knew that there was the need for tuition, because when I did my masters, I did a bit of private tuition just to make a bit of cash while I was doing my master's degree. So I knew that the need was out there, and I kind of hate saying this, but I was in a really, really fortunate position that my husband's salary could cover us.
Sure.
So I know that is a massively privileged position, and I didn't feel huge. I didn't have that pressure of like, I have to earn money. Like I wanted to earn money. Obviously, it's nice to earn money. But I didn't have that pressure.
Some people are locked in, aren't they? Like literally they will lose their house unless they carry on or find something else immediately, I suppose. It's definitely a privilege.
I guess I want to... Okay, so on that point then, I think a lot of people will be listening to this and thinking, I want to leave. I want to leave teaching. Okay, I know you're a secondary teacher. We do get a lot of secondary listeners, mostly primary, but it's the same kind of boat. I want to leave this profession. I have this specialism. You managed to leverage your specialism and end up being a whole business that you've grown. As someone who's well down the road now, left teaching, it ended up working out for you. Talked about how it took longer maybe than you thought it might do, but it's worked out for you. What would you say to someone who is in that position right now where they want to leave teaching? They like teaching. They enjoy working with the kids, but they want to save their mental health. What would your best bit of advice be to them? Would it be to, think of an idea first? Would it be to take the plunge? Would it be to kind of spread yourself out a little bit and see what works? I mean, I don't know. I know what I'd think, but what do you think of someone who's actually lived it and left fully? You've literally walked out the door.
I would actually probably not advise people to do it exactly how I did it. If I was taking a more measured approach. Although, I don't know, saying that, sometimes just making that leap and just going, okay, I've just literally burnt every single bridge. I can't go back. I don't want to go back. And it sort of forces you to do stuff. And I'm very much of the opinion of just like, I just kind of like have an idea and then I just crack on with it. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And luckily for me, I don't know, it seems to work quite well. I would say, and actually I'm in a group for female entrepreneurs, and there's a lot of teachers in that group who are kind of like doing similar to what you're doing. They've gone part-time, they're setting up a business on the side, and they're they're trying to shift the balance between reducing their teaching hours and increasing what they're doing with their business. So I would say probably in hindsight, that's a much better way of doing it. If you don't have that safety net, and if you if you literally can't afford to just be like, I'm probably not going to earn any money for a few months. Is that okay?
Do you know what the sad thing is to me? It's just that, I mean, firstly, the fact that we're in this state, and we talk about it all the time on this podcast. We're just so annoyed at the situation. But like, we've all got kids now, which is quite weird thing to say. It still feels weird because I was so young. But we all three of us, we have children, and we were speaking just before the podcast, and we didn't want to talk too much about it because we wanted to save it for this. But you started saying about how you do want your kid to have good teachers, though. and it kind of makes, even just thinking about you, Kate, it is kind of sad, really, that the system failed you, because you're clearly an extremely passionate languages teacher.
Yeah.
And I want people like you to be teaching my kids at school. So,
I know.
What do we do? It's such a big question. I know we can't answer on this podcast, but, do you have any thoughts about this or rants or whatever?
I think that's one of the reasons I do a lot of the work that I do. So I write resources as well, and I teach languages to languages teachers to help them improve their confidence. And I feel like a lot of the work I'm doing is trying to help teachers to not get as stressed and to reduce their workload for them by saying, look, here's some really good quality resources that you can literally just take and you can just use them. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel constantly. You don't have to be constantly writing your own worksheets and things like that. So just little things like that is what I'm trying to do to help reduce teacher stress and workload. But I'm fully aware that is a drop in the ocean. And it is a massive problem. I think it's genuinely an entirely systemic issue.
Yeah.
And it's sad. I think it's really sad for people who are fantastic teachers who just feel absolutely exhausted and they just can't do it. But equally, like, you know, if you're not that keen on it, like there are loads of other really good things you can do. And I think what you find as well, once you move away from it, that there are loads and loads of things you can do in the world of education that don't involve standing in a classroom in front of kids. For me, I've got to say, like, I am really, really passionate about languages and language teaching. But, and this might surprise people who, if you like see my social media and I have my own podcast and stuff like that, I'm actually really introverted. So I used to find that being surrounded by people all the time was really, really tiring, and it would absolutely drain me. So for me, working on my own, you know, being able to chat to people on podcasts, or, you know, I teach online. I go into schools and do, you know, sort of one-off half-day training. That's about enough. And having enough kind of connection with people, but not being surrounded by loads of people all the time, actually suits me really, really well. But then I know for a lot of people, they love being surrounded by people and the kids. I did a thing on my Instagram recently that you guys did. Well, Hayden, no, Dylan.
Yeah,
who's the answer? Dylan answered it.
It's me, but
Dylan answered about what's the best thing about teaching, and, you know, every single person said the kids, basically. A variation on.
Do you miss that, Kate?
It's about the kids. Yeah, sometimes I do. Yeah. And I will still defend teenagers when people are about teenagers. And I'm like, you don't know, like, honestly, most teenagers are just the best people, and they are so funny and they're clever. Like they are super, super clever, and not in a like, oh yeah, they're, you know, doing well in exams kind of a way, in that their brains are just amazing. And I do miss that.
I suppose in secondary you get a different world of like kids and banter and things.
Well, that's the thing that keeps us going. So I'm interested to hear from a secondary teacher. Is it just the same? You know, are there secondary teachers out there who are just staying because they love teaching the kids? And like, it sounds from what you've said, that is the driving force for so many people.
I think it is. I think when you teach primary, and, you know, I've got a 4-year-old, so I now look, teenagers seem really big to me and old. And in fact, when I look at the year 6s, so he's at preschool, which it's attached to a primary school, and I see the year 6s and I'm like, you're enormous. And I think you see it from the primary perspective. You look at teenagers and you're like, oh my God, but they're kids. They're still kids. They're still really little. A 14-year-old boy might be 6 foot tall, but he's still a child. You know. No, they're silly and funny, and no, they're great fun.
Brilliant.
And I do, I try not to think about it too much, actually. But
oh, sorry.
No.
How much do you miss it, Kate? How much do you regret it?
Oh dear, Dylan provoking everyone again.
But I think that's why I've stayed working with teachers, and I kind of still hear it, and I love hearing the funny stories about kids.
You're still in the game on the sidelines in a different way.
Your social media, obviously, you have a lot of people, I suppose, get in touch with you and stuff, and want to chat to you about it.
Although there are quite a lot who are like, oh, I want to leave teaching, or hey, guess what, Kate? I've handed in my resignation, and I'm like, great.
Podcast.
Kate, where can we find you? Because I want to make sure we plug your socials before we go. Where can we find you, and where can we listen to your podcast? Your podcast. Your podcast. That's what it's called.
Listen, no, sorry, we're going to have to scrap this whole thing, because before we learn any modern foreign languages, I think Hayden needs to learn his own language.
It's foreign to me.
It's hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
My spodcast is the Kate Languages, the Kate Languages podcast.
Do you know what I was thinking?
I'm actually like crying. Oh,
on
man.
Spotify.
The
Kate Language podcast. Is that what you just said?
The Kate Languages podcast. Yes.
Amazing.
And I'm quite consistent. My website's katelanguages.co.uk. I'm at Kate Languages on Instagram. I have a Facebook page as well. Apparently I'm on LinkedIn, but I don't use it very much, so we'll ignore that one. But no, I'm mainly on Instagram, to be fair. That's my social media of choice, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I was going to, very quickly before we I guess round it off, I was going to mention Instagram, because I think as a business owner, and I think as someone who maybe we're talking about leaving teaching, and Hayden and I run our own tutoring business. Again, our listeners will know you run your own business, which is very much education based. Social media we found to be incredibly powerful, a very, very powerful tool, because what we can do as a tuition company is we can upload lessons if we want to for free onto like YouTube or something. We can show snippets on Instagram. We find a lot of our traffic comes from social media these days. And I suppose my question to you is, someone thinking about leaving teaching, coming from the teaching role, it can be very much embedded. And we spoke about this in a recent podcast, how teachers are kind of told, whoa, stay off social media. No, you don't want to go anywhere near a barge pole because it can, you don't want to get yourself in any trouble. Just don't do anything like that. However, in the modern age, I feel like a lot of teachers make money from using social media. Like we're in the classroom and we have social media for our business. You've stepped out and you have social media. It's incredibly important. What would you say to someone thinking of, how can I start a bit of a side hustle? Well, I'm a bit worried about using social media. What would the benefits of that be in your opinion?
I literally would not be able to run my business without social media, because how do people hear about you? How do people find out about you if not on social media these days? I'm not going to print off, I don't know, there's 1,500 secondary schools in the country. I'm not going to print off 1,500 letters and, post them all out to secondary schools like people might have done 20 years ago. But no, and sometimes it feels a bit like a necessary evil. I've tried to really embrace it and really enjoy it. So I like doing silly remix reels and try, do funny things like that as well. So, but yeah, it's very easy to overthink it with social media as well, to worry and just be, God, I don't want to show my face and things like that. And I was like that for a while, and I was like, oh, whatever. This is my face. I can't pretend my face looks any different. This is just me. But I used to think I've got to put loads of makeup on. I've got to do my hair. And I was like, but that's not me. If you ever meet me in real life. I know.
And even Dylan's journey recently, with social media, I know you've become, and you said it out loud, a lot more relaxed. At the start, we were like, oh no, everything has to be this crazy production value, and we have to do 19 takes to make sure that if we said or in it, we have to cut out, redo the whole thing. And you've realised recently, haven't you? You've just been like, oh, for God's sake, no one cares anymore. I made a crappy meme of a dog laughing, and the text was just, when someone says teaching's easy or something, it got 1.5 million views. And then I think about another thing I make, which is really intricately laid out lesson on how to teach fractions. It gets 4 views. And I'm just cool, I'm just going to do random stuff there.
Yeah, just do random remix reels with silly dogs in or whatever. Yeah. There's no rhyme or reason for any for how many people see these things as well.
Not at all.
And that's kind of what I tell myself. I'm like, no one's going to see it anyway, so I just put stuff out there. And
but then if one person sees your business and is like, Kate language, cool. They saw a funny meme, but actually they're in a secondary school and they're struggling with, they want to move to Spanish. It's actually I'm on your page now and I'm on your website. So I think it's super powerful. I know you think the same thing.
And Facebook groups as well can be annoying, but also can be really, really useful. I mean, don't go on there and just sell. But one of the I think one of the ways I got my name known sort of at the beginning was offering free resources on languages teachers Facebook groups, and then just kind of answering people's questions and just being helpful. And not because I'm I'm going to answer your question, and by the way, come and have a look at my website and give me money. I'm just I just want to be helpful, and I think people see that. Yeah, exactly. But I think they see it when you're coming from a genuine place of just I just want to help you guys. So I probably do more free stuff. I don't know. I mean, with the podcast and loads of free resources and stuff. But
it's useful, and
good.
You get your name out there.
Yeah, brilliant, bro.
So, we're going to wrap it up there, Kate. I think we've covered everything. I've absolutely loved talking to you. I know we've been meaning to do it for ages.
I know, it's been brilliant.
It's awesome. But guys, if you're listening to this, go and check out Kate's podcast. It is really insightful. Spodcast.
My Spodcast,
I find
and it's
really
not
insightful.
just about languages. I think that's the thing as well, because it's called the Kate Languages Podcast. People might think, she's just trying to teach us languages. But I do talk quite a lot about teacher wellbeing. And
you did a burnout episode, I think, how to avoid burnout.
Yeah.
As well.
If you want to hear my whole story.
We spoke about it a bit on here. Guys, go and check it out. We've learned a bit about Kate and how she left teaching. There's a whole episode on talking about leaving teaching. So go and check it out.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Nice.
But I just want to say thank you, Kate. We really appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome. I don't know why I'm saying you're welcome.
Yeah.
We've done
it's hard to end a little bit. I always find it tricky when we're ending. Okay, thank you, and good night.
Even though we're going to continue speaking because we're just going to press end record. But goodbye. See you soon.
Okay, bye. And here's some secret stuff you're not going to hit.